welcome to another episode of Soul Sentred. I'm Jaynie Morris, your host. It's my absolute pleasure to have your company once again. My guest today is somebody that completely aligns with everything that Soul Sentred is all about. We're all about good health, well-being, fitness and longevity, and all things that tie that up just for you, to inspire you, motivate you, and help you with whatever is going on in your life, be it now or in the future. And my guest today has got something very special to share with you in regards to not just her personal story, which I'm pretty sure you will get a lot of alignment with, and maybe some things that she'll share with you that you'll have some light bulb moments, but also some tips and help in how to relaunch your life. If that's where you're at right now, that's one of the things that she can do, and she's going to dive in and tell you all about that. My guest is Juliet Lever, and Juliet is also a contributor of our very popular magazine, Soul Sentred magazine. Of course, that's always available from our website, soulcenter.com. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and do so that you can get any of the issues that we've already produced, and you can check out some more of what Juliet does right for us and what she does. But for today, it's all about Juliet Lever, and welcome to Soul Sentred, the podcast.
Thank you. It's so beautiful to be here and having a good chat with you. And I feel really excited to share all of the nuggets that are going to come out based on what these listeners are probably looking for and maybe don't even realize right now.
And I think that's a great thing to say, Juliet. Knowing you as I do, the things that people don't realize, the things they don't know that they don't know.
That's right.
Juliet, can to help our audience who haven't read some of the great articles that you've already written for us in Soul Sentred magazine, can you just take us back a little bit and give everybody a little bit of an insight into who Juliet Lever is and where you've come from and where you're going now?
Absolutely. Well, today I am really blessed to live a life where I feel like I'm in the driver's seat of my life, and I get to work and live with my beautiful soulmate and partner in life, Paul Alicio, who I know you had on the podcast a little while back. And we teach courses that really help people step into more purpose and more fulfillment and more alignment in their lives, whether that's helping them with mental, emotional, even sometimes it manifests in the physical misalignment, and finding out, well, what's actually happening and what is in the unconscious. And that's really where all of our courses help people to start to find their own answers and solutions within, because we do live in a society where people are looking for all the answers externally, and with our courses it's all about redirecting people back inward. And I think it's very easy for people to be told just look within, but people don't actually get the practical tools to know how to actually do that effectively. So the courses we teach is one part of what I do, and I also have over the last few years birthed a beautiful book writing program, and I run book writing retreats now to help people write books that are really meaningful, whether it's a self-help book, a teaching memoir, or something that they know is going to help someone who's maybe feeling a bit stuck or lost in their life. And so that feels truly beautiful for me to be at this point. But if I can rewind, it's now just over 11 years ago now, my life was completely different, and I completely had handed over the reins of my life to everyone and anyone else but myself. And I was in my mid to late 20s, and I was working in a corporate job. I was married, very passionless marriage. We'd been together since I was 16, and naturally I had grown and changed a lot in that time. And I started to develop what I now in reflection can see as being out of alignment with what I was really meant to do in this world and who I was really meant to be. I just developed debilitating anxiety, and the anxiety that I developed, I was driving into the city here for this podcast, and it kind of reminded me of driving into the city and going to my corporate job, and I would have such bad anxiety that my heart would be palpitating out of my chest while I was driving. I would have to drive with meditation music playing just to try to feel somewhat peaceful, and my anxiety got so bad that it actually forced me to start looking into places that I hadn't looked before. I started obviously cutting back things like coffee and caffeine, and I started looking into things like meditation and what you can do, like what does it actually mean when your body has anxiety, and I started keeping a journal. It was really fascinating because this first week of keeping a journal really changed the game for me. I can still remember vividly writing all of my entries for the first week of a journal, and it was really just, journaling my thoughts, what was coming up for me, how I was feeling. I didn't have any recipe for how to journal. I just thought, well, I'm just going to get some thoughts out on paper because I read something that said journaling was a good idea to help with anxiety. And it was 1 week later that I went back and reread my journal, and something really surprising jumped out at the page. I noticed this pattern in the things that I had written over the course of the week, that I had written the word overwhelmed about 25 times in the space of 1 week. I actually got a highlighter out and I highlighted and counted. And I thought to myself, I had this light bulb moment of self-awareness of, maybe that's why I'm feeling so overwhelmed. And so I wrote a big list of everything in my life that I was feeling overwhelmed about. Everything around my work, around my relationship, around my health, around even feeling overwhelmed about my anxiety, which just makes matters worse, right?
Yeah.
And I wrote a big list of all the things I was feeling overwhelmed about, and all I did next to each of those items was wrote a C or an A. And the C stood for the things that I could change. And so I wrote a few things that I could do that were in my power, and the A stood for the things on that list that I had to accept, that I couldn't change. And immediately the list halved, and I immediately started feeling more in control. My nervous system started to relax. And as I worked through over the next couple of weeks, all of the things that I could change, I cut that list down to about a couple of things that I was feeling overwhelmed about, and I started to feel in control of my life again. And it was the first moment where I had this visceral response to the mind-body connection and just how potent and powerful the thoughts that we're thinking and how much they're actually influencing our nervous system and the chemical warehouse that's running through our body. And so that was a really big turning point for me, and it led me down this rabbit hole of just wanting to learn everything and anything I could about how to really change our thoughts, our habits, how to shift our beliefs. I started looking into all sorts of different things, and I remember I did a meditation course at the WEA here in Adelaide way before meditation was mainstream and cool. I was there and I went to this course, and I think it was $50, and I sat in a room full of women who were, I think the youngest person in the room besides me was 70, and I looked around and I was in my late 20s and I thought, where's everyone my age meditating? And now it's a lot more mainstream, but back then I felt like I was venturing into these unknown lands, right? And the more that I started to research things, the more I started to learn, the more I started noticing more patterns and themes. People that I had met in my life that were successful, that were thriving, that were in the driver's seat of their life, that seemed to be awake and not just kind of going through the motions, they'd all mentioned that they'd studied this thing called NLP. And I thought, well, what is that? And I started looking into what is neuro-linguistic programming. It sounded really strange. It sounded like computer programming or something. And then I also had a mentor at the time who, I was a sales manager for a finance company. I had a pretty stressful job. I had a sales team of about 50 people around Australia. And I remember I had a mentor who was a sales mentor for me, and he said, Julia, if you study one thing in your life, learn about the power of hypnosis and self-hypnosis and suggestion. And so those two things just played on my mind, and they were there, and I sort of started researching, but no training organizations that I looked at felt right. They all kind of seemed a little bit beige, if this makes sense. And then during that time of me finding myself and really, the more I started to find out who I was and really started to define my life values, the more I started to realize how much my relationship wasn't aligned in terms of our values. And my ex-husband now was about 8 years older than me, and so he hadn't really changed a lot in terms of his values while we were together. But I had gone from a girl who was 16 to now 27. My life values changed from when I was 16, it was all about having fun and partying, which was great. We connected on those values, right?
Yeah.
Then when I was 27, my life values really started to shift into personal development and health. And so that created a lot of friction in our marriage, because all of a sudden I was speaking up for my health, my personal development, being, really focused on all of this. And it was almost like the more I started to get into alignment with myself, the more the life that I had built for myself, based on all the things I thought I should do, started to fracture and fall away. And I ended my marriage in September of 2013 now, and over the next 6 months, I really had my kind of Julia Roberts eat, pray, love journey of going to Bali and going on retreats and, being single for the first time in my adult life, all of these amazing adventures in this time. And it was about 6 months after I'd ended my marriage that I went out for dinner with a girlfriend of mine. And she said to me, I have just had the most incredible reading with a psychic. You have to go and see her. And I was very skeptical about all these things. Even though I'd started looking at meditation, I still was a very practical, black and white, what you can see is what's real kind of girl. Mm-hmm. But my friend was so adamant that I thought, what the hell? I'm in my eat, pray, love era. Let's go see a psychic.
Well, yeah.
Why not, right?
Because Julia Roberts did in Bali.
Exactly right. It's. I started to have this running joke with my friends and family that my whole life was starting to turn into a cliche. So maybe that means I'm doing it right. And anyway, so about a week later, I went and sat down in front of this psychic, and she looked at me deadpan. And she just said to me, honey, I cannot start this reading. And I said, why not? I've paid my money for my reading. And she said, I can't start this reading because all your guides keep yelling at me is, where's Paul? And I had no idea what she was talking about. I had never met anyone by this name. But look, this is a long story, which is why I've written my book. I will cut through it. That I met Paul about 2 weeks after that. And when I found him, he was an NLP and hypnotherapy trainer. And initially I thought, I'm just meant to study with this man. I'm going to find out some more about his courses. And so I arranged to meet him to find out more about his courses. And the moment we met, it was this, there you are. This is why no one else has ever felt or fit or been right. And we've literally just been like best friends by each other's side ever since. Wow. So that was 11 years. It was 2014 that we met. What are we now? 2015. Yeah. So the last 11 years has just been the most incredible journey of being that beacon for people who feel so trapped, so stuck, so lost, which is where I was, to say no matter where you are and no matter what's happening in your life, you can take one small step every day in the direction towards greater alignment of your truth, of your soul purpose, of your path. And each step you take over the course of 10 years, that's going to compound. And I think sometimes people look at where they are and they think of the thing down the track and it seems too big. But all we need to do is just take those small steps each moment. That now when I look back, the last 11 years has just been, it almost feels like my life before that, it was just like a surface level life waiting for now this chapter to begin. So and it's interesting, and thank you for sharing in depth on that as well, because I think a lot of our audience, as they are listening to what you've just shared in what happened 11, 12 years ago for you, in this world that we currently live in, overwhelm is the word is used a lot. However, the actual feeling of overwhelm in so many people these days is higher than it ever has been before. And as I said on the introduction, we were just playing with words and saying, well, there will be light bulb moments in this conversation with you, Juliet, that things that people know but they don't know but they'll know happen, is that with overwhelm and as I say, with the way the world is right now, a lot of people will be feeling enlightened by what you've just said. They'll have they'll sort of understand. They'll sort of probably say to themselves, "Oh, Juliet, that's where I am now. That's where I am now." But it's a fog. It's black. It's dark. I can't see. It's great to hear what's happened with you, and that there's light at the end of the tunnel. That's what we're hearing from you right now, Juliet. But I don't know. I don't know how to do that. I don't know if I want to journal. I don't know if I want to. I'm just stuck, Juliet. And I'm also really scared. Really scared and I'm overwhelmed and I'm just, I feel like I can't move. That to me is something that a lot of our listeners will primarily be thinking as well. So to those people in our audience, based on what you just shared with us then, what would you
what would you say to them? What would your advice for them right now be?
It's a really good question, and I am always mindful of making sweeping general statements of advice, because as you would know from NLP, everything we do is tailored to each unique individual, and we all represent, even the word overwhelm shows up differently for each person in terms of how it feels and how it impacts them. And I would encourage people who are listening to start getting really curious about the language that we're using, because even something simple like I'm feeling really stuck, if you think about how that feels, it feels very stagnant, it's very fixed. And the ideal place to be with our self-talk is a place of possibility and movement. And so rather than saying I'm stuck, it kind of shuts us down. Maybe we could start being curious with, well, aside from stuck, what else am I feeling? Well, I'm feeling scared. Okay, you mentioned scared.
Yeah.
What are the things specifically that we're feeling scared about? Because what we tend to do if we want to create overwhelm is we'll cluster things. And if we cluster things into too big a chunk, that can create overwhelm. Most people who you ask that are feeling overwhelmed, if you ask them what they're feeling overwhelmed about, they say everything. But everything isn't specific. Everything is a cloud. And so one of the first things that I used to do when I first started my coaching business, when I did quit my corporate job, about 6 months after I met Paul, I quit my corporate job and went all in on the life coaching, and I ran Bali retreats and all sorts of things. And I would work with corporate women predominantly who were wanting to either start their own businesses or who were feeling stress and overwhelm. And the first thing I would do before I would start doing any change work or any coaching with them or anything like that is I would have them tell me, okay, before we start this session, Jaynie, let me just grab a pen and paper, and I want you to just empty everything that's in your mind right now. I want you to just empty out everything that you're feeling overwhelmed about right now. Give it to me. I'll hang on to it. And then at the end, we'll see what's left and what you're still feeling overwhelmed about, and I'll email it to you and you can action those things, okay? But I don't want your background tabs that are running to be blocking what could be an opportunity for you to be present with yourself in this session. And so what we want to do is get really specific. Okay, if you're saying you're overwhelmed, if you just keep running that loop, this is what we do. I had a business mentor once talk about this loop called the crazy 8 that we do in our head, which is, oh, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. Oh, what about everything? Oh, well, what's everything you're feeling overwhelmed about? Oh, I'm just feeling really overwhelmed. Oh, what about everything? And we just go back and forth with our thinking. So most people aren't actually thinking, they're just replaying the same tape, and it's not a useful tape. You know, if you're listening to radio and there's a song that comes on that you don't like, you change the song. But we don't do that with our mind, yeah? So you're the DJ, right? You're the person in control on the what's playing in your mind, but we don't get taught how to use that. We don't get taught how to use this brilliant mind. And so I would say start getting really specific on, okay, write it down. If you're listening to this podcast, maybe press pause for a second, get a pen and paper and literally just write down, what am I most scared about? What am I feeling overwhelmed about? And face it, because the worst thing we can do is walk around life with shadow monsters and things that we're afraid of that we haven't even shown a light on. And I know Paul talked a bit about our Overcoming Overwhelm training, and I'm happy to share that link. It's a fantastic resource, and it walks you through 3 really simple steps to help the listeners overcome overwhelm and follow through that. And we still get emails from people that download it for free and say, oh my gosh, this has helped me so much and I feel so much more in control. So yeah, definitely. I think the first thing is be curious. Go, okay, well, if this is what I'm experiencing right now, like some question, the power of asking yourself really powerful questions, or what would the opposite of that feel like?
And isn't it interesting when you were sharing with us in the beginning that when you found yourself in that place over 11 years ago where you were anxious and you had all sorts of things going on in your life, and you had given the reins, quote unquote, to everybody else except yourself, and then you did that week of journaling, and then when you went back and read what you'd written down and that word overwhelm came up, however, the curious thing that you did in that moment before starting on this incredible journey that you have now, where you're impacting thousands of other people's lives through not only your own life story, but your expertise and your talents in being a mentor and being a coach and helping others, is that you looked at that list and then you started to, using your term, chunk it down anyway with C and A. So, you know, even back then, again, you knew, but you didn't know, and then you knew. right?
That's it. And I think that we all, even for the listeners listening, your unconscious mind has so many answers, but often we're too busy to give ourselves the space and time. Turn off the devices, give yourself some space with yourself, and you will be amazed at what intelligence can bubble up, because we are in an age, and I think people are a little bit information overload. People are just cramming themselves full of more and more information, but to give yourself that space and time to have your own transformation and to integrate things and to apply things. One thing I didn't realize that I now know, being a trainer of NLP, was that was helping myself be at cause. Change and accept are the only two options we have in life with anything, right? We can only ever change or accept things. And the things we can't change, we have to accept, right? I think one of them that I put on that I had to accept was that I have size 12 feet. I was like overwhelmed because I couldn't find nice shoes for an event that I had on the weekend. And I was like, well, I just have to accept that my parents are Dutch and I have size 12 feet. That's okay. I can't change my foot size. But that was something, that was like a tab that had been open for me that I didn't even realize. And it sounds so silly, but this is what happens sometimes when we put pen to paper. We also get outside of it and we look at it and it gives us this ability to respond, and that's what we want, versus it all being in our head and just feeling like it's building up that momentum in a negative way.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and as you shared with us, like your journey then went on with Paul, both in personally but also in business, and the two of you have created an incredible organisation, Evolve and Relaunch, of which I've had the great honour of being a student initially with NLP and timeline therapy. Now, I did that course. I found you both, and I did that course not to practice, however, to go down that path, because I was in a personal situation that most of my audience knows anyway, that was pretty dramatic and traumatic, and I was in a space where I was completely overwhelmed, and there was a crack in that overwhelm that was Evolve and Relaunch. And so I thought, well, why don't I just, I'll take myself off grid for 4 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and I'll do this 7-day-a-week course. And it was online then because it was COVID. It wasn't. It was lockdown, with these two people, Juliet and Paul. And I did that. And the lessons that I learned on a personal level were pretty significant, so much so that I then went along with both of you and ended up doing my master's, which was great. Again, not to practice, however, just for my personal use for myself, but also it has helped me with my family and friends in various situations since then. And the reason that I share that is because one of the gifts that came along in the beginning of that journey was me discovering one of your many talents, which is as an author. And so let's talk about your book, Relaunch My Life, Reconnect to Your Soul, Redesign Your Future, and Discover the Magic Within, because this book was the reason that I went ahead, and we'll talk about that in a moment, with your writing course, and wrote my second book. So can you share with us how this came about, what the magic is within this book as well, Juliet?
Absolutely. Well, and first of all, congratulations for writing 2 books. People always think the first one's the hardest. I think the follow-up is challenging equally so. So well done on that.
Thank goodness I had you on my side.
And, this book really came about, I noticed patterns, okay? And so for several years after I'd started my coaching business and I was running retreats in Bali, I would get asked similar questions from people that I was coaching, from people at workshops, from people at retreats. These women would ask me these sort of same 6 or 7 questions. How did you get the courage and confidence to walk away from your marriage, from your job? How did you change your life so quickly? Because I had a lot of people in my world that physically saw my transformation and they just thought, whoa, what has happened? She is such a more alive person. I was always very positive, but I was positive covering a lot of, can I swear?
Yeah,
a lot of shit.
Yeah.
I was positive,
Go
but
ahead.
but underneath I was not okay. And people really saw me transform into who I am, which is I'm an open book now, and I'm authentic, and I'm here to share this message and this, help people step into their purpose as well and be brave and realize like this is your opportunity, this life right now, it's happening, go for it. I'm the person that encourages people, just quit your job, go on, follow your dreams, go for it. I'm that friend, right? That person, that coach. And
oh, I love those friends.
that's it. I see your potential, not your problems, right?
Yeah.
And so I noticed a lot of patterns in the questions people were asking me, and I thought, wow, I'm going to put this, maybe I should just put this in a book so that then people that have this question can get it answered when they need it rather than having to wait until they can talk to me, right? And I don't know if it's an efficiency thing or a lazy thing of me wanting to write the book, but I had this dream and this desire, and I had this idea. I always loved writing. I did creative writing workshops and was in a competition when I was a child, and I always loved writing. And so I set out and I thought, well, if I were going to write a book, what would have been the book that I needed when I was feeling so stuck, so lost, so overwhelmed, that would have helped me? Because a lot of the books that I had come across were far too dense and technical, that I was already feeling full and overwhelmed. I needed something that was going to give me some shifts and some insights and some real tangible transformation. And so I knew that I wanted the book to share a bit of my journey, but I didn't want it to all be about me. I wanted it to also provide some insights and some tips, drop some seeds for people to start getting curious about other things that might open the door for them. And I knew I wanted each chapter to have activities so that the reader could actually write it, maybe take the book away on a holiday and feel like they've had that relaunch, that transformation. And so that being said, I knew that I wanted to self-publish because knowing what I know about the publishing world, I wouldn't have the full creative license over how it would look and how I wanted to structure it. I was very specific as well about wanting to have a set amount of, like, a certain size of font. I wanted it to be really easy to read, and anyway, all of these things. And so I sat down, and it probably took me from start to finish with my editor and cover design and formatting about a year to finish the book. And when I launched the book, I didn't realize what an impact it would have. It became an Amazon bestseller. It's not, a New York Times bestseller, but that was not my intention. My intention was for it to be an extended business card that helped my ideal client know, like, and trust me and find me and feel like they entered my world. And I'll always remember I had a phone call one day, a couple of years after I'd published that book, from a woman I'd never met. And she said, one of my friends just handed me your book. I was about to jump on a plane to Bali for a holiday. She just handed me your book. I read it from start to finish on the plane, and I want to come and do your next retreat. She then ended up studying NLP, masters, hypnotherapy with us. She ended up being, she's actually a really great friend now. So that's what I love about the power of a book. And a lot of people say they want to write a book, but you don't know that book. It works its way into this world like magic, and it finds the people that need it. Friends pass it on to friends, and it can be a little slice of Jaynie or a little slice of Juliet that people can open up when they want to and when they are ready. So it's really non-confrontational in a similar way that podcasts are. But there's an intimacy that happens when people read a book, because there's not only your voice as the author, but there's the reader and their voice, and you're having a conversation with them. And I really wanted to honor that. So that was a really beautiful experience writing the book. And then a couple of years after writing the book, a lot of our students started asking me, well, how did you write your book? Can you help me write a book? And so then that naturally, organically birthed my Birth Your Book course, which now I have about 30 writers in that book writing course, of which 10 have published, which is really exciting. And the other 20 are, working at their own pace with their own goals. We've got a couple very close to completion. And then I run an annual writing retreat here in Kings Beach in South Australia every year as well, which is just so beautiful to hold space. It's 3 nights, and it helps people be in that creative hub with other writers as well. So
when you completed, after that 12 months and you completed the book, and then you went back and read the book again, did it reveal anything to you about yourself that you actually didn't see?
It's funny you should ask, because my first draft of my book I sent to my editor, and then after I'd sent it, I felt this like sick feeling in my stomach, and I quickly emailed her and said, can you please delete the draft that I just sent you, because I realized that draft was just all my cathartic purge, self-healing, and no one needs to read that. And then I started the book again. So I literally wrote a whole book that was really at effect, blaming all the stuff that I just had to get off my chest. And then I sat down and I thought, who is this book actually for? Who am I writing this for? And I rewrote it with that person in mind. And I also reread it in the editing process, and I asked myself, will I still believe all of this in 5 years' time?
Ah, good question.
And that really helped. Although I did 5 years after write a foreword where I've added in a little extra chapter at the start where I talk about how I don't think we just relaunch our lives and that's it. And this is why Paul and my business being merged now, Evolve and Relaunch, we are constantly, as humans, we're a process. We're constantly evolving, and we're always relaunching these new iterations of ourselves, our new identities, our new shifts as we start learning. So when I look back at it now, I look back at it with fondness. Would I write a few things differently? Sure. And I think that that's sometimes the tricky thing for people when they are writing a book is knowing when to finish. You know, that saying of the artist only stops painting when they put down the brush. It's similar with a book because you're always learning and you can keep tweaking it forever. But at some point you've got to say, do you know what, this is going to help people now. I'm going to release it, and you can always do a second edition as well. So.
I think it's really interesting with writing a book and the process that I've learned. And yes, the first book that I actually, that I published was back in 2014, and that was about my journey when I was given 2 months to live, right? Yeah. So I wrote that for similar reasons that you've already said, I wrote it for it wasn't cathartic, more for me it was like a book that I would, if I was somebody out there in the world that had been given a prognosis of a couple of months to live or what have you, of a book of hope, and not to succumb straight up to that prognosis as well. And then the second book, which you guided me through as well. But what I've noticed throughout that process, and with so many authors that I've interviewed over the years as part of the work that I do within the media as well, is that reading hardcover books isn't an art that's lost anymore. Like people are, yes, there's the Kindles and things like that, and there's the ebooks, fantastic and very convenient, but the actual tangible feeling of a book. Now, have you found that, and the authors that you've been helping as well, in regards to hardcover is the preference, or?
Well,
it's a technical question, I know.
I would have to say I've been surprised my Audible and Spotify sales have been higher lately.
Interesting.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
I find a lot of people will download the Kindle or the audiobook, and then if they like it, they then buy the hardcover.
Okay.
And especially because mine has activities. I've got downloads that people can get from my website to do the activities. But I think for the writers that have published in my course, I mean, there's no better feeling than holding the physical book,
isn't there? Yeah, exactly. So tell us in regards to where you're going now and what you're doing.
Well, I'm actually working on 2 books at the moment. I'm working on a commercial fiction, which is a completely new endeavour for me. And it's...
Oh, that's interesting. What led you to go down that path?
Well, I'm always liking the opportunity to learn and grow and step outside my comfort zone.
Okay.
And I wanted to give myself the opportunity to express my writing in a different way, in a creative way, and yet also the intent, although my writing coach has recommended not to try to have an agenda or anything, my intent though is to have hidden meanings in the fiction book that can help the reader. So even though it's not a self-development book per se, to give the reader, transformation through, the power of story and metaphor as well. So that is, I'm very much at the beginning of that, but it feels exciting. Yeah, because I do have a goal one day to get a book published, to have a publishing deal. And so I figure I was doing one of the master classes with Margaret Atwood, and she wrote The Handmaid's Tale, and she said, writing is one of the best hobbies anyone can have because it only gets better as you age. And I just thought, imagine if I just keep writing now, what I'll be like in 10, 20, 30 years, the art will continue to develop. I'm about to have intake for my book writing course, actually, where we guide all of the chapters in the book, which is a great opportunity. I do that mid-year. Start of every year we do a book club as well. But Paul and I were just about to start teaching master practitioner, and then we've got our NLP and hypnotherapy courses later in the year. And then, we do also, on a personal side, have a property development business. We've got a lot of things happening in that side of things as well. So lots of different projects. No 2 days look the same, but I definitely, my other book is a book to help people write their own books called Author Rising, and that's very close, but it's been a labour of love, that one.
That's exciting. That's exciting.
One thing I did just want to add as well
Yeah.
is we were chatting about that when you were talking a moment ago about hardcover books. We were talking about that it would be really beautiful to give one of your listeners the gift of a signed copy of my book, Relaunch My Life. So the only thing they need to do is share this episode, either the Spotify or the iTunes or the YouTube episode, and then tag Soul Sentred and my name, Juliet Lever. And if you tag us both, you'll go in the running, and we'll draw that on the 15th of November.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Thank you. That's an awesome offer, and because this book is amazing, as will be all of your future books. Before I let you go, though, I want to circle back on something that you said before, and of course it is part of your business name as well, Evolve. One of the things that we get a lot of comments and I get a lot of communication and feedback from our audience is about, when is the right time to do anything, or I'm too old, I can't start now, or I feel so stuck now, I guess I'm going to be like this forever. And you touched on really well the fact that life is an ever evolving process. And so can you just speak to our audience before I let you go, to give them a little bit of inspiration and awareness that wherever they are in their world right now, if they're thinking of starting, or they think it's too late, or that there's something going on, that they can just do it. Because I love the fact, let me just say, I love the fact that you said that you are the person that says, hey, quit your job and just go and do it. I really love that, because I've done that a lot. So please.
Yeah, I respect that about you. There's a certain, life is for living. And I think I touched on it earlier when I talked about the people who I met who seemed the most alive. There are a lot of people who are living, but they're kind of existing. And I think we all know that. Am I existing? Am I staying in a stagnant comfort zone? Or am I stepping out of that and growing? And it can feel scary. Change is, for a lot of people, we try to resist it. We try to avoid it. It seems scary because it's the unknown and we want things to stay the way they are. But I know Paul, one of his favorite sayings is you can either evolve by choice or by chance. And a lot of the times, if we're not in the driver's seat of our own growth and evolution and we're kind of sitting back, sometimes life will bring us things to force us to grow. And so I love to seek out the growth consciously, and there's always other challenges, as we've all got challenges going on in our life, myself included. And yet I try to see those as opportunities for, okay, where can I grow and what can I learn through this and from this? So I think anyone listening that's thinking, oh, it's too late, or I'm too old, or anything like that. I had a client once who said that to me, actually, and she was maybe mid-60s. And I said, well, hang on, how old do you think you're going to live? And she said, I've never thought about that. And I go, well, how old do you want to live to? And she said, oh, maybe 80. And I go, okay, well, do you want the next 14 years to be the best you can be? We did a couple of things, a couple of hypnotherapy processes in that session. At the end of the session, she said, I've changed my mind. I want to live till 90. And I said, okay, we've just got 24 more years left. I think it's a really great thing to think about. In my book, one of the exercises I get everyone to do is write their eulogy. And I think I'm always conscious of death. I'm always conscious of that. We don't know. Nothing is guaranteed. And I think you don't know how long you have. It could be a really long time. So why not make it the most beautiful, fascinating, fulfilling, soulful, purposeful? And that might sound, cheesy for me to say, but if there's even 1% of you that's listening to this going, oh yeah, I'm a little bit stagnant or stuck, just start getting curious and start looking at, well, what would one step be I could take today that would be a step towards a different future? One of the things that I love is we talk about in masters and also hypnotherapy, this process called the 2 futures technique. And that's one thing I do a lot, which is visualizing what is my life going to look like in 10 years' time, going the way I've been going. And if I make this one change today, what is my life going to look like in 10 years' time? And your life is always going on different trajectories. And I think sometimes it's just, well, today I'm going to make the choice to, go for that walk and drink those 2 liters of water. That's sometimes just shifting the needle in that direction. And then the next day it can be something else. And then before you know it, a year's gone past and you've taken 365 steps in a completely different trajectory. So I would say just one step at a time. I'm not saying that I, don't have days or moments where I'm like, oh gosh, this life is so challenging me and it's so, showing up. There's a lot of things that we're all navigating, but I think, just be curious, find what's there inside of you and give yourself some space and time with yourself, and you'll be amazed at what beauty does come out as well.
Yeah, I love that. That's really powerful. And it's really interesting because when you were talking about your client who said, oh, yeah, well, maybe 80, and the changes that were made, like everyone that knows me knows that my intention is that I know when I'm going to pass away. I'm going to pass away the day after my 100th birthday.
After you get your letter?
After I get my letter from King William.
Yes. I was going to say, who will it be by then?
King William. And, I've always been a master event planner, and I've had a few pretty cool milestone birthday parties, and my 100th is already in the planning. I mean, it's decades away.
I'll expect my invite in the mail.
Yeah, but however, the reason I quickly share that is coming back to what you just said as well, is that there was a moment in time, and it's actually the two futures that you talked about that you do. It was in that moment when I was doing that with you, that I looked at that, and Soul Sentred has always been a passion project of mine in regards to the podcast and the magazine, because all I've ever wanted to do is shine a light on amazing people like yourself, share your stories with our audience, see if there's any light bulb moments, have some pennies drop, and maybe make a change, be it that one step or, several bridges, a change in a different direction that might be more positive, more healthy, more to take them through to a life to 100, as well. And that's why I do what I do with the magazine and the podcast, and it did come back to that two futures that you just spoke about. Juliet, your book is amazing. Relaunch My Life, Reconnect to Your Soul, Redesign Your Future, and Rediscover the Magic Within. And where can we get this beautiful book?
You can get it on Amazon, Kindle, Audible. You can get it at my website, julietlever.com, and I'll send you a signed copy if you get it off my website as well. So
excellent. And if you wouldn't mind just sharing with everybody again, if they would like a signed copy of your book, all they have to do is
share this episode. So however you've watched it or listened to it, and then tag at Juliet Lever and at Soul Sentred.
Excellent. And of course, if you would like to read more, stay connected with Juliet through Soul Sentred, you know what to do. You just go and get our magazine, our bi-monthly magazine, Soul Sentred magazine, and Juliet is one of our amazing regular contributors, which we're so grateful. Juliet, it's been great to have you on Soul Sentred, the podcast today. Thanks so much for your time. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next book. I'm looking forward to the fiction.
Oh, me too. It's a fascinating journey. So I'm not sure how it's going to turn out, but
it's going to be exciting.
It'll be interesting for me as well.
Exactly. Thank you so much for being on Soul Sentred, the podcast, Juliet.
Thank you.
And if you've enjoyed this episode as much as I always love bringing these episodes to you, you know what to do now. Subscribe so you never miss an episode wherever you're listening to this or tuning in at our YouTube channel. Subscribe, like it, and I bet that there are some moments in today's episode that you have thought of somebody in your life that this might help them. So please share this episode with those friends as well. And of course, as I mentioned before, Soul Sentred magazine, Juliet is a regular contributor. Go to our website, www.soulcentre.com, and subscribe there and get your copy of Soul Sentred magazine. I'm Jaynie Morris. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to having your company next on Soul Sentred, the podcast.